Now, what's going on as it relates to New York City finances? And I guess the answer depends on which mayor you ask. The current mayor, Michael Bloomberg, and Mayor-Elect Bill de Blasio definitely aren't seeing eye to eye on the fiscal fate of Gotham here. Now, the split, it even spilled out into public appearances for the two mayors yesterday. Big issue, new contracts for city workers and their unions. As we talked about it, a whole bunch of them are all coming due here. And the back pay that they're owed from their last contract, these folks have been waiting for 3 years, and they want the new mayor to make it right. Bloomberg's take, keep the unions down, keep the city in the black, warning that the self-interest of politicians and union leaders, the quote-unquote labor electoral complex, as he deemed it, could quickly lead to devastating fiscal consequences. But de Blasio, he fired back, given that the city is looking at between $5 and $7 billion owed to these workers. De Blasio's line, no previous mayor ever let that happen. Dominic, has Bloomberg, a week ago Bloomberg said, hey, you know what, I'm not going to, shoot spitballs from the balcony here. When I leave, I'm going to let the guy run his own show. But he sure seems to be sticking a lot on his lap when he walks in, Gracie Mansion on day one.
Well, we have to understand, and your assessment is correct, it's a philosophical disagreement between Bloomberg on how the city should run and de Blasio. There's a reason why all the unions, not just one, all the unions rolled the dice and said, we're not going to deal with Bloomberg on a new contract. We'll wait for the Democratic mayor. There's a reason for that. Yep. They feel they can get a better deal. But Bloomberg is correct in this assessment. I hope this is not taken in a wrong way. You can't just give away the entire store. And so we're going to find out what de Blasio's made of real soon, because you make a lot of promises and these unions expect that it's payday.
Now, there's two schools of thought, though, Dominic. One is that, hey, he didn't get endorsements from these guys. He got one union endorsement, really to speak of, in the primary process. So he didn't owe any huge favors to these guys when he walks in, like other Democratic mayors who, really had to get some favors to get through the primary process. The other school of thought is the whole message in the campaign was the tale of two New Yorks. Right. He's going to look out for the outer boroughs. He's going to look out for the little guy. Where does he have more pressure? Does he have to make right with these folks here?
He doesn't owe the unions, but all of their membership are the people that put him in City Hall. So he does owe them indirectly.
And the philosophical alignment, too, that you were hinting at there, that the two New Yorks, the solution to the two New Yorks in part is labor unions in the middle class. So he doesn't, he wants to give them a better deal than they have now, Dominic. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yes.
I don't think he wants to give them everything that they want.
And it comes with a price. How's he going to fund a whole bunch of projects he wants to do if he doesn't have any money left over after he pays out? And they've been waiting for 3 years now.
Well, don't forget, Bill de Blasio is in lockstep with the Working Families Party. Those are the unions you're talking about. That's who created him. I was always surprised they didn't back him in the primary and they sat out of this thing. I was really wondering where that was going. Secondly, UFT didn't endorse him in the primary, but they endorsed him. They were Thompson's backers. They pulled the plug on Thompson before there was definitely no runoff. So they said to Thompson, I'm sorry, buddy, you got to bow out. Right away, they pulled the plug, which shut down the whole Thompson race.
But they did wait late in the game.
But if you're coming in late in the game, their timing was impeccable because it shut down any talk of a runoff. Even if it was 39% and not 40%, Thompson had no more air in that sale to keep things going. But the Working Families Party was a big thing. I think going back to the Tale of Two Cities, though, too, the big question is in the pensions. And I spent a lot of time with all these unions, meeting with them when I was working with Joe Loda, one-on-one meetings with these guys. They don't want zeros at this point. And this is the first mayor to pass on, Dominic, you were covering the city for a long time on this, to pass a budget on to the next mayor with a zero on the line item for back pay. Zero. Every mayor, Koch gave it to Dinkins, Dinkins gave it to Rudy. There was always money in there.
It's interesting that you point that out, because I grew up in New Jersey, and Tom Kean, beloved governor of New Jersey, but he pulled fast and loose with the pensions in New Jersey also and underfunded them.
They all did.
And then that started a chain reaction that went through. Jim Florio took it on the chin because he actually tried to pay some of it off, but Christy Todd Whitman and
McGreevey.
But Florio also raised taxes,
to try to make up for that deficit. But going all the way through, this fast and loose budgeting with the line items and not, I'm just going to ignore this debt that I owe, and look, I can make the numbers balance. We see it a lot in state governments. It's really shady. It's really
what
shady.
debt do they owe? And by the way, don't forget.
Well, they have an obligation.
Right now, you've got a
there is an
2.6
obligation to the pension as part of the agreements. But whether you're talking about New Jersey or New York, if you have an agreement in place with your workers that we're going to pay X amount into the pension fund,
Well,
you gotta pay it.
but the retroactive pay is the issue right now with no money in there. And right now, there's supposedly a $2.6 billion surplus being carried over to next year. And he rolls out today this pre-K aspect and the after-school aspect of what he wants to do for the tale of two cities.
Well, we knew that. To be fair, he said it all during the campaign.
But that's a $500 million number, $500 million. There's 5 times that in the surplus.
But he also said he would pay for that by raising taxes on the top income earners. Now, Dominic,
which he needs approval in Albany
he
for,
does.
which I never think he's going to get that, which is another big issue
and
there.
some agree with you. What can you read into, Dominic, the people that he's surrounding himself? Bratton, we already know, came on, raised a few eyebrows because of his position on stop and frisk when he was in L.A. and even before that in New York. Budget director here, seems like an adult here, or at least has got some respect on this. And the person he wants to be the next city council speaker, what can you tell us about her?
Well, she's far left, her politics. I think that there are those that will argue it's good for the city to have a woman speaker. So there's a close, de Blasio put some of his stock on the table to get her in as speaker. So that's a good thing. They'll have a good working relationship. But with both of them coming from the far left, how are you going to be able to agree with everyone else?
But if you look at Bratton, and we're hearing certain names here for the education chief, right? What do you think in terms of, is he practical or is he picking on the progressive side? Not that that's impractical, but where do you think, if he's given any leads here?
Practical, good announcements that he's made. But with Bratton, what's so interesting is that, you know, de Blasio, and we're about to find out what he's made of real soon, because he can't deliver on all of his promises. But you put in Bratton, Bratton is the guy that really pushed stop and frisk through the roof.
And defended it as recently as last week.
Right, yeah. But he brought it in from Boston. So
it'll be interesting. Him and also the budget director who used to work for Shelley Silver up in Albany and apparently knows the state budget as well as anybody does. So it's, you know, finding people who are well schooled and have done this before and know what they're doing. He's definitely trying to insulate himself by surrounding himself with people who are experienced.
I guess my
and
only point is for all the people who are saying and throwing around Acorn and everything else, that was going to be the kind of administration he has.
Acorn?
Look, remember that? Remember?
he's much smarter than that.
Let's make this clear. This man ran on one platform and is now looking like he's going to govern another, which I'm thankful for. I was driving up
the
today.
governor did the same thing.
Today I was driving up talking to a Democratic assemblyman who knows Shelley Silver pretty well. I asked what was going to happen in Albany and where things are going to go. It's going to pass the assembly. What happens to the Senate's another story. But the real question here we were talking about is, if you're Andrew Cuomo, what are you fearful of right now? If you look at the Rudy-George Pataki dynamic and who controlled the New York media, it got more coverage in it and so forth. That was a big issue. The only difference here is Cuomo's been in office longer now, opposed to Rudy that got him before George Pataki. Andrew Cuomo really has a lot to worry about at this point.
But with the dynamics,
because of his politics and where he wants to go.
There's not a lot of chits that de Blasio's got to ask for out of Albany, the way it plays out right now. I mean, if you look what's on the legislative table for this coming year, tax cuts, that's certainly not going to help out the city, okay, but it's going to hurt a lot of cities a lot more in terms of what we're hearing right now. I don't think de Blasio's got to run scared of Andrew Cuomo like every other elected seems to, but I guess we'll find out. I guess my last question is on this. The mayor has had a whole bunch of projects that he's putting in a way they're almost poison pills. The city council is going to go along with these, at least it looks that way right now. It's not without precedent, but a lot of people said, really? I mean, for all the talk of, hey, I want to let my next guy have a fair shot, he's kind of, you know, making sure the groundwork for at least the first few months is just cleaning up after the former mayor.
Well, that's pretty standard. It's a fair shot, but
the scope of these?
But I've never met a mayor, Richard, that on his final days doesn't push through as many of his projects, that Democrat or Republican. That's the way they do business.
Except for the soccer stadium in the Bronx, because that's public money that's being used, and that's a little bit sensitive. That I think the rest of them.
Roosevelt Island, he's signing a lease right now. I think that was signed yesterday or today.
Yeah, but that's been in the works for a while. Like
sure,
that's not the last minute push through that these kinds of projects are.
Rudy had Yankee Stadium. That was a big issue at the end.
Guys, this next subject, I'm fascinated by it, not because there's much debate about how stupid the comments were from the elder statesman of the Duck Dynasty. And if you watch the A&E show, you know who I'm talking about here, Mr. Robertson. but it's what happens next. Where is the line between a reality TV show guy, let's not elevate him, into saying dumb comments, and then where a network decides who should or shouldn't, in effect, be their standard bearer out there? And let's be honest, this is the most popular show by far on that network. What should or shouldn't happen to him? We'll talk about that after this.